So thank you for coming in on board on this. This is Gary Keene is my guest today. He is the head of AV at UAL in London. Gary has also had a bit of work in other organisations before then. Gary, if you wouldn't mind, just give us just a little bit of a background about where you are and where you've been, just very briefly. I don't want to take up too much of your time on it.
Yeah, sure. Very happy to. I am quite old, so this is going to cover quite a lot too. I've been at UAL, which is University of the Arts London, for a couple of years now. I'm the head of AV there. Before that, I spent 8 years at Google. I was one of the AV leads there. A long background in being essentially like an AV manager or an AV lead for big corporate organizations like Deutsche Bank and Morgan Stanley. But I've also spent 11 years working in integrators and as a consultant, and 4 years working for a software manufacturer. So I'm one of those strange, odd people who's got experience across the whole industry.
You got good knowledge, etc. And I guess my first question is in regards to your latest role, because obviously the pandemic hit, and things changed significantly from that. So I guess the first question is just obviously in regards to lecture capture and where you think the lecture is going for colleges, including your own, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. So when I think about like hybrid lecturing and also lecture capture, I'm quite comfortable splitting those into two. So we're an arts university. A lot of the work we do is hands-on and practical and doesn't really lend itself to hybrid teaching. So we do very little Microsoft or Zoom style teaching. Increasingly, we're doing quite a lot of lecture capture. And that's often because the nature of the work we do is, again, technical. And there's often quite a steep learning curve when you come into it. You're learning new skills, new language, new terminology. And so the ability to go back and watch something again is proven to be useful for students in helping them achieve their learning outcomes. The other point too there for us is that on average, around 1/3 of our students aren't based in the UK when they came to us. And so just again, the ability to be able to watch back something to make sure that it's really well understood, we need to ensure that we're providing that as a service that's accessible and equitable for all of our students.
Okay. And I guess coupled with that is the fact that down through the years, you've seen the evolution of audiovisual and its migration or its convergence, should I say, with the IT world and the network, and this particularly video over IP. So how has that experience been for you in the education field?
So at UAL, we're into our journey now with video over IP. So if you imagine us as like 5 fairly significantly sized campuses based across London, in total, we've got 19,000 students and about 4,000 staff at any one point. Right. So, we're sort of medium to large scale in terms of UK universities. Our first campus, which ran purely over VoIP, was opened a couple of years ago. And that, again, real learning journey for us, but we can already see the benefits there from taking that approach in terms of being able to deliver a consistent experience and a consistent degree of reliability, and also in terms of being able to reskin rooms as we need to, as teaching needs change, which for us is a really critical factor. So for us, we've taken the first plunge. 1/5 of all that we do now runs on VoIP, and we're about to start work on our second relatively recent new campus. And again, that's going to be a VoIP solution. So we're in the process of going all in.
And you mentioned reskinning. So just for us, what does reskinning look like?
So we have a very high pace of change when it comes to forecasting what's going to be taught to whom, where, and how in any given space. And that's driven by certain courses growing in popularity and literally needing to teach more people, other courses diminishing in popularity, but also too, a lot of the work we do is very tech heavy, particularly in the broadcast, animation, and production spaces.
Okay.
And so the nature of the courses that we're teaching change very quickly too.
Okay.
So
Okay.
teaching need is constantly changing, and audience size is constantly changing. So if
Okay.
you look at a space, an average UAL space, and you say, how far in advance can you forecast what you're going to be teaching, to whom, where, and how? It's about 3 years. After that, we're guessing. Yeah.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
for us, one of the real challenges there is that typical AV life cycle for hardware is 7 years. So we have to think more in
Okay.
sort of more modular, portable terms about the way in which we kit out rooms, and then that allows us to move kit very quickly too.
Okay. Okay. And just on the point of, I think some of the colleges are trying to achieve this means of lecture presentation in the room to an audience, but also remotely to a remote audience. Do you think that actually works? And what's the general setup, the use case you would have for that if it wasn't, just a lecture giving it, as opposed to an interactive session with people in the room? Is it feasible, number one? And if so, what's the configuration generally for that kind of setup?
We do some of that, not a huge amount of
Okay.
it, because again, a lot of
Yeah.
our work is quite practical and hands-on. So I'm
Yeah.
going to answer your question in a slightly different way, which is
Okay.
that the technology needs to support the learning outcomes.
Okay.
And if technology can't be evidence to support learning outcomes, then you shouldn't really be doing that, because you're giving a part of your audience a poorer learning experience. And that
Okay.
inevitably is going
Okay.
to end up impacting the grades that they get, and the way in which the success of your course is judged. So I
100%.
wouldn't put sort of technology in the middle of that argument. I would
Mm-hmm.
say I would look at what it is that we're looking to achieve in terms of a learning
Mm-hmm.
outcome, and then work backwards from there to make sure that technology can support that, and to experiment with it to see that it can. And if it can, then you're in a good space. If it can't, then ideally you really shouldn't be doing it.
Okay. Okay. And so just in regards to the video over IP aspect and liaising with the networking people, how has that experience been for you? Are there any tips you can give to us to sort of in advance of that discussion or meeting that has to be happen with an end user or client for integration of VOP with networking people?
Yeah, sure. So if you are looking to start your journey towards video over IP, you've got to have networks on board, and you've got to make sure that they're included in every conversation. You
Mm-hmm.
can't deliver a fait accompli to them and tell them to get on with it.
Okay.
The initial learning curve is quite steep for network teams. I think that's fair to say. And again, we've been in the position where we've now got a significant building supporting about 4,500 students running totally on VoIP. And again, I would say that we had like a 2-year run up to that, and we got there, but we made a fair number of mistakes in the run up to it. And again, I think most of that could be solved by just ensuring that, again, networks are on board. They know what the scope is. They know what the outcomes are. They know what service level agreements need to be in place. And they believe that they're being treated as an equal partner. If you can do that, then you're well set up for success.
From the design stage as opposed from the implementation stage, would you say?
Oh, no, from the design stage. I mean, and even from pre-design stage. So
Okay.
I think as an AV team, you can't commit to AV over IP on your own.
Yeah.
You absolutely need to have networks on board, having done the modeling of it to ensure that it's feasible for either a given building, a given campus, or a wider distribution.
Okay. I'm just going to move on to the subject of remote access. It's obviously something that's growing quite substantially with AVIs and on campus as well. So, how are you using it to date? How useful are you finding it? And where do you see it going? Can I ask?
Yeah, sure. So again, we're dipping our toes in the water when it comes to remote access, remote monitoring, remote support. We have local teams on the ground in each of our major campuses. So historically, they've prided themselves on being ultra responsive to any issue that gets typically phoned in from a teaching space where something's not working properly, and then everything's been dropped and someone will go there and they'll rectify the fault. So we're good already. So for us, really, it's a case of potentially marginal improvements in terms of the amount of time it takes to diagnose and fix a problem. But also, too, there's like a secondary benefit, which means that if we've got AV teams who are not focused, waiting for that phone to ring and to go out and do some break fix support, they're typically going to be able to be involved in something like a live event or an exhibition, which has the need for more high touch, more engagement, and really is sort of delivering more value to the customer.
Right.
So for us, what sort of drives us and what's our motivation to try this technology out and see whether it works, it's not really a big improvement in our break fix SLA. It's about empowering our AV teams to be able to deliver higher value work to our customers.
Okay. Are you finding improvement in response times, that you're able to triage easier?
Yeah, we are. I guess for us, we've done our proof of concept and it worked. And we deliberately chose like our oldest campus in terms of network profile. And it worked really well. It did all the things we expected it to. I guess, a couple of issues for us. One was the setup was more labor intensive for each space than we thought it might be.
Okay.
So again, that's one of the things that's causing us to pause and take a look, because we don't have all the resources we would like. And when you're having to dedicate resources to set up rooms on a system of this type, then it stops you from doing something else you need to be doing.
Okay.
Also, too, I'm not sure from a university perspective in the UK, because again, we are really tight on funding at the moment, that the cost model is that good. There's an ROI there, but the ROI seems to be a weak or a marginal one at the moment.
Okay. That's very
so again, from our thinking, we want to see how the market develops. We want to see if products come out that for us are easier and quicker to set up. And if there's more competition in the market and prices come down, that might create a more compelling ROI for us. And that's the moment where we'll jump in and begin to expand our footprint.
Okay. Are you finding it frustrating, because obviously there's vendors who have got APIs, remote access APIs, that can do pinging and diagnostics, but not diagnostics of a third-party device?
It's enormously frustrating.
Okay.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. And have you found an interop API solution from one vendor who can? I mean, obviously there's talk of one or two, but have you tried them yet?
I think we've tried both of them, because I think there are a couple out there. And again, things have worked in the way in which we've expected them to work. We've got, again, when we did our POC, we chose a mix of rooms. Some of those rooms were pretty less than a year old. Again, designs that we had been in control of. Others were legacy rooms, where again, like kit had been put in over a number of years. And again, everything worked exactly as it should. And pretty much everything, with the exception of one manufacturer or major manufacturer, was easy to monitor, manage, and support at scale. But again, what you were describing earlier is this sort of ongoing juggling act of which solution am I going to take that gives me least work to do, knowing that at some point I'm going to have to do a lot of work. So I think, again, the market's just going to mature, and the sorts of solutions that are best for us as a client, I think, are potentially coming into the market, but coming into the market at maybe a price point that is a little too high for us at the moment.
Okay.
So we just have to be patient.
Okay. And just finally, around the ecosystems, it seems that the industry has basically got two. It's got Crestron and it's got QSys. And obviously, we're not asking for a comparison. People have their views about the Pepsi and the Coke, the Nike and the Adidas. Do you see any other players coming into that space of any value at this stage, or of any impact?
So I talk as a customer of both Crestron and QSys, and we use Crestron in our Microsoft Teams meeting spaces. We use QSys in our larger, more complex and sophisticated teaching spaces. So I think I've got a good perspective on both. I like what both do.
Uh-huh.
So again, I'm going to state that up front. I think competition is more likely to come in slightly left field, and that's going to be from IPMX. So
Okay.
again, the idea of open standards architecture,
Okay.
I think is more likely to be the significant competition for
Okay.
QSys and
Okay.
Crestron. I can't see anyone out there at the moment who's looking to directly compete against QSys and Crestron, who's
Yep.
got a compelling enough proposition that's likely to knock one or both of them off of their quite high perches at the
Yeah.
moment. But I think,
Yeah.
again, IPMX and this idea of open standards architecture, I think that's going to force both Crestron and QSys to take a fresh look at their business models.
Okay. Okay. Gary, thanks very much for your time. That was really, really good information, and thanks for your time, and we will talk again soon. Thank you.
Been a pleasure. Thanks, Peter.
What I'm going to do now is